Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rotary Club of London meeting for July 26th. And I've already messed up my PowerPoint for today. It's not going to be a great day if I can't do PowerPoint. So everyone's line is muted. You all have the ability to unmute your line and ask a question and take part in a conversation, but we just ask that you keep them muted during the speaker so that there's no background noise. As well, as you were warned when you joined the meeting is being recorded, and the non-personal information part of it will be posted to our YouTube channel sometime in the next day or so. So, as I promised, we are changing how we open the meetings, and today's opening is talking about Rotary's motto. And Rotary's motto causes a lot of confusion in a lot of members, depending upon how long you've been in Rotary. So the big question we have is our motto, he profits most who serves best, or is it service above self? Now, maybe Jim can ask this during Sergeant at Arms and actually make some money this way, but Rotary's motto, or mottos, because we actually have two official mottos, were birthed from 110 years ago during the second annual Rotary Convention. And at that point, Rotary adopted he profits most who serves best as its official motto. However, during a speech at that same convention, the motto of service above self was also introduced. And over time, they were both used throughout Rotary as mottos. In 1950, at the International Convention in Detroit, Rotary adopted both as official mottos. And in 1989, the service above self motto was adopted as our principal motto. So if you were confused as to which one is our official motto, they are both official mottos, but our principal official motto is the service above self motto. I would now like to call upon Bob Early to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, President Don. It's a pleasure to introduce Carol. Carol came to London in 2003 after a 30-year career in the technology and telecom sectors. She rose to the rank of vice president with Bell, and then followed that up as president with Stentor Resources and Lucent Technology. She served 10 years as the dean of the business school, and during that time saw the relocation of the business school over to Western Road. After her term as dean ended, I think was a major change, especially for Londoners. Carol decided to stay in London. Most other leaders that come to London do not. And she's made it her home ever since. With her background in technology and telecom, Carol has been appointed to various government agency committees in research and development, science and technology, and was appointed by the government as a director of GM Canada in 2009. We can all remember back in that time frame the corporate and financial situation. She is a corporate director presently with Maple Leaf Foods, Intact Financial Group, and GM Corporation, and other private corporations, and was previously a director with Ballard Power, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. Carol was also a member of the Vancouver Olympic Games Organizing Committee and currently serves on the Board of Governors at Western and is the chair of the Stratford Festival since March 2020. An auspicious time to become chair, as we can all remember back what happened then. Carol has numerous recognitions. Our YMCA awarded her as a woman of distinction. The Women of Influence organization has recognized her, as well as the National Post, as a female financial leader. Honorary doctorates at numerous universities. She is an officer in the Order of Canada and has been awarded the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award. She's been inducted into the Telecommunications Hall of Fame and her own London and District Business Hall of Fame. On a personal note, Carol was raised in Petrolia and enjoys traveling and fine wines and combining the two at times. We have a Rotary connection. She's close relative to past President Bill Young, and another one inducted into the Business Hall of Fame locally with Paul Cocker, son of our past President Herb in 69 and 70. So it's my pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Carol Stephenson.
Well, first of all, Bob, thank you so much for that great introduction. And I'm really pleased to be here today. In fact, I was reflecting, I think the last time I spoke to this club, I was being honored as a Paul Harris Fellow. So I have great admiration for the Rotary Club and all the things that you do in the community and actually globally. So thanks again. And I'm actually delighted to talk about the automotive industry. It's become a bit of a passion for me. As Bob mentioned, I joined the GM Canada Advisory Board before bankruptcy, and then after bankruptcy was the government's appointment to the GM Global Board. So I've seen a lot of change in the last I guess it was 2009. So in those years, it's a transforming industry. Now, what I would say, though, is that we are living through probably one of the greatest technological revolutions in history. And it's affecting everything we do, from shopping to entertainment to travel to dining. And the same revolution includes the auto industry. It's driving quite a seismic shift in how people and goods will move about as we transition from internal combustion engines to fully electric vehicles, including some that will drive themselves. And you'll hear me refer to electric vehicles as EVs, that's the shorthand, and autonomous vehicles as AVs, just in case I forget to say it in full. But the future of personal transportation, it's going to be electric, it's going to be autonomous, and it's going to be connected. The future is also coming faster than you think. You know, I used to think this was a long time off, and you know, would technology really move this quickly? And it's coming a lot faster than I anticipated, and I think that many of us are anticipating. But it's going to be better. It's going to be better for consumers, for society, and certainly for our planet. That's the exciting future that I want to share with you today. Given most of my knowledge comes from serving on the GM Board of Directors, I'll use mostly GM examples to illustrate my points. So this isn't a GM advertisement, it's just that's the company I know best, given I'm on that board. But I think first, to understand where we're going, we have to understand where we have come from. And I know none of us remember when automobiles replaced horses and carriages more than 100 years ago. But at that time, they actually fundamentally transformed our world. They brought jobs and prosperity. And for so many people, they brought economic and social freedom. But that positive change came with some unintended consequences. Crashes that cause injuries and death, emissions that contribute to climate change, and congestion that clog our roads. And these are real problems, and the industry is using its technology, its talent, and its expertise to solve them. So GM's vision is a world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. So innovation is important to this industry. A few of the first that GM had developed in their past, the first electric starters and the first production V8 engines, if you remember those, the first automatic transmission and the first airbags. GM also built the electronics for the lunar roving vehicle that the Apollo 15 astronauts drove on the moon. And now we're working on autonomous vehicles for use in space. The industry first Onstar connected vehicle technology has connected millions of customers, providing a lot of peace of mind, and has helped first responders save lives. GM's also used innovation and resources to make significant contributions beyond the automobile, and we continue to do that. Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, you may remember, GM stepped in quickly to help. Employees raised their hands to build 30,000 life-saving ventilators in just 154 days in our plants, and millions of masks and other PPE for healthcare workers, including utilizing the Oshawa plant, really helped first responders, schools, and other community organizations. So with that same speed and spirit of innovation, GM's helping to deliver an inclusive EV ecosystem that can eventually put everyone in an electric vehicle. And it also will generate profitable growth that supports good jobs and benefits our communities and our owners. So when you look at the big picture, in just 5 years, GM has gone from introducing the Chevrolet Bolt EV, which was the industry's first affordable long-range electric vehicle, to now developing our entirely new Ultium Global EV platform, which I'll talk about in a minute, to committing in January to be carbon neutral in both our global products and our operations using science-based targets. So we've accomplished these things because there is a strong and growing conviction among employees, customers, dealers, suppliers, unions, and investors, as well as policymakers, that electric vehicles and self-driving technology are the keys to a cleaner, safer world for all of us. In fact, GM is going to increase its EV and AV investments from 2020 through 2025, which is just 5 years, to $35 billion, representing a 75% increase from its initial commitment announced prior to the pandemic. And the company's enhanced commitment is going to accelerate this transformative strategy that I've been talking about to become a leader in EVs in North America, and also a leader in battery and fuel cell technology through this Ultium battery platform and Hydrotech fuel cells, and also through Cruz to be the first to safely commercialize self-driving technology at scale. This year, GM is going to launch the new Bolt EUV, and that's kind of the same size as an SUV, a redesigned Bolt EV, as well as our first Ultium-based EV, and that's the GMC Hummer. I don't know if you remember the Hummer in its before electric time, but the Hummer EV is going to deliver super truck performance with 0 emissions. And it's got incredible capabilities. I don't know if you watch the Super Bowl ads, but it has this feature that includes a crab walk, which actually allows it to drive side by side, and something called Watts to Freedom, W-A-T-T-S to Freedom, which is almost like a little mini generator, should you have a power failure in your Hummer. So early next year, the Cadillac Lyriq luxury SUV goes into production facility, followed by many more models that include crossovers, trucks, SUVs, and performance vehicles for every need, but also for every price point. And by mid-decade, so 2025, GM expects to sell 1 million EVs annually in North America and with our JV partners in China, which are the 2 largest markets. So the figures for the coming decade are mind concentrating. To stay on track for net zero, by 2030, the industry's annual production of electric vehicles needs to be 10 times larger than it was last year. And the number of roadside charging stations needs to be 31 times larger. So you can see we have work to do if we're going to hit the net zero target by 2030. The foundation of the EVs is this Ultium Global EV platform that I mentioned, which is really proprietary Ultium batteries and an Ultium drive family of interchangeable drive units and motors. GM believes that it's important to make its own battery cells and to control the supply as the EV production grows. We all are familiar with supply issues. And so I think with the growth that's coming, we really believe that we have to own part of the supply chain, such as batteries, and not rely 100% on third parties. We announced that we're going to build 2 new battery cell manufacturing plants by mid-decade to complement the 2 that are already under construction. And battery costs are one of the biggest challenges to making at scale affordable electric vehicles for everyone. So combined with the ongoing technology advancements, this is also going to bring EV costs in line with comparable internal combustion engine vehicles. We expect to reduce battery costs by 60% compared to today's Chevrolet Bolt and deliver twice the energy density. Now, automobile companies are also going beyond the retail market to target different industries that are seeking sustainable solutions. BrightDrop is GM's new EV business that offers an ecosystem of electric first to last mile products, software and services that are going to help delivery companies move goods more efficiently. It's being produced at our CAMI plant just down the road here in Ingersoll, and its first trial was in Toronto, and FedEx found a 25% improvement in productivity. The driver costs are about a third of the cost per mile for delivery companies such as FedEx and Purolator and others. So that 25% improvement in productivity comes also with the robotic pallets that are used for loading and unloading packages on and off these trucks. So later this year, BrightDrop will build and deliver the first EV 600 vans to FedEx. And similarly, there's another company called Merchants Fleet that's moving forward with plans to put, I think it's over 12,000 EV 600s into service. So we're really expecting demand for electric light commercial vehicles is going to continue to grow as we see so many consumers relying on e-commerce. Another exciting source of growth and emission reduction is our Hydrotech fuel cell technology. And like BrightDrop, Hydrotech demonstrates that our vision of a world with zero emissions isn't limited to passenger vehicles. These Hydrotech fuel cells we're putting into the big Navistar Class 8 trucks that are going to launch in 2024. And we believe there's going to be many, many more uses for fuel cells, such as stationary power, aerospace, and the military. Now, the industry knows that mass consumer adoption of EVs requires more than winning technology and products. We have to address customer preferences and provide a new and a seamless experience. So we're collaborating with partners and third parties to increase the number of home, workplace, and public vehicle charging stations. In fact, now if you get an electric vehicle, we can arrange to have the charging station set up in your garage. So we really do have to make this much simpler for customers. We've teamed up with a company called EVgo, and they're going to build 2,700 new fast chargers over the next 5 years. And they've already started construction in Florida and California. And in addition, we're tripling the number of EV chargers at our facilities in the US and Canada. So a lot more work to do with public charging because we understand that, it is really an enabler to getting people into electric vehicles and feeling comfortable. The all-electric future that we're creating inspires us actually to do even more to help mitigate the effects of climate change. As I mentioned earlier, we plan to be carbon neutral in all our global products and our operations by 2040 using science-based targets. And GM has signed the Business Ambition Pledge for a 1.5 degrees Celsius reduction, which is a call to action from a global coalition of UN agencies, business and industry leaders. So we are aspiring to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty vehicles globally by 2035. And we're not alone in that. The industry is moving in that direction. The other thing that we're doing, though, as well, is sourcing 100% renewable energy to power our global sites, so our plants, by 2035, which is about 5 years earlier than we had predicted and announced a year ago. Right now, we're the world's 10th largest off-taker, they call them, of renewable power, and the largest in the manufacturing sector. The other thing that is really important is we're enabling the reuse or the recycling of 100% of our batteries, because they actually have long-term value beyond their automotive life, and because it's the right thing to do. So because we're making these strategic investments in the future, we're also making a big investment in the development of self-driving vehicles. I mentioned Cruz earlier. That's our majority-owned subsidiary, and we're determined to commercialize safe, autonomous, and electric vehicles on our way to the driverless future, one with zero crashes. So Cruz continues to make significant progress with our autonomous vehicles, and we're convinced that this is going to change the driving world and open up new opportunities for those who can't or those that choose not to drive. Cruz is deploying driverless vehicles in the San Francisco area now, and it's received a permit from the California DMV. So as I said before, the future's coming a little faster than maybe some of us thought. This development is huge because safely removing the driver is the true benchmark of a self-driving car. Up to this point, they had something called safety drivers, which is really someone that was in the vehicle just to make sure that everything was functioning properly. This removes the driver. So it's going to bring that future much closer. Also, GM, Cruz, and Microsoft are using Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud and edge computing platform, to help commercialize self-driving vehicles at scale. Another example, Walmart is using vehicles from Cruz to test an automated delivery service in Scottsdale, Arizona. The autonomous vehicle story, though, continues with the Cruz origin. And this is a new vehicle, a self-driving electric shared vehicle. And if you drive a newer vehicle, you may already have experienced some of these stepping stones to get to fully self-driving vehicles. Some of the technologies like forward automatic braking, lane keep assist, blind spot detection, they all use sensors and cameras to help drivers avoid many of the most common crashes, and they're available to customers today. Then there's Super Cruise, GM's product, which is driver assistance technology. It enables hands-free driving on more than 200,000 miles of highways in the US and Canada. 2 years in a row, it's been named as the top driver assistance system in the market. I don't know if any of you have driven with it, but I have. And it is significantly more relaxing for long trips. I drove to Toronto and back. It used to be that I'd be extremely stiff when I would get out of the car. Well, no longer. With Super Cruise and your hands off the wheels and your feet off the accelerator, it is a much more relaxing drive because you can actually move around a little bit. So I found it just fabulous for long trips. Let's talk though about safety for a moment, because it is the cornerstone of GM's pledge to put our customers at the center of everything we do. On the technology front, GM and the University of Michigan's Transportation Institute partnered to study the effectiveness of some of these safety-related features, and the results were dramatic. For example, GM's forward automatic braking with forward collision alert reduced rear-end crashes by nearly half. And I don't know if any of you had it, but if it senses that you're going to uh, collide with the vehicle in front of you, it automatically puts your brakes on. And so being able to stop crashes by half is pretty dramatic. And the rear park assist cut the backing crashes by 38%. The other thing that we have done is created alerts that remind drivers to check the back seat before exiting their vehicles. Too many kids, too many pets have been forgotten in the back seat. So you get your rear seat alert that reminds you that there's something there before you leave. And also, Buckle to Drive is a technology that prevents teens from operating a vehicle until they fasten their safety belts. And as a group, unfortunately, teens exhibit the lowest rates of safety belt use. So instilling good habits at an early age can help save lives and reduce injuries. Finally, GM believes in connectivity. And what I mean by that is connecting customers' vehicles to the world around them. We provide Onstar and connected services to 20 million members globally. For more than 2 decades, Onstar has brought peace of mind to members with trained advisors who can help with directions, post-crash response, or during natural disasters. And collectively, these advisors handle about 150,000 calls a day. I used it once. I was on my way to Petrolia. As Bob mentioned, that was my hometown, and I had just learned that my mother had been admitted. She'd broken her hip and had been admitted to the hospital, so I was kind of rushing home. And don't I have a problem with my car? So I hit OnStar, and it was fabulous. They very quickly came to my rescue, got me an alternate vehicle, and I was able to get to Petrolia by the time my mother was out of surgery. So firsthand, I've experienced how it can help you. They're also moving on to something called OnStar Insurance Services, and through a carrier partner today, it can eventually use data from the vehicle's OnStar system, if you're willing to provide it, to determine individualized pricing. And it's supposed to be rolled out in the US by the end of this year, and then on to Canada. And I don't know if any of you are in the insurance business, but a lot of assumptions are made, but you can actually really customize rates based on a person's driving habits, whether they're safe or not safe. So that will probably be coming here next year. So that's what GM is doing to lead in what I would call a new world of personal transportation that's going to be very different than we've all experienced and as it is today. And as I said, GM is not alone. The entire industry is transforming. So I think it's a historic time right now for the industry. As I mentioned at the beginning, the industry has changed before, and it's about to do it again. And that brings me back to GM's vision of zero crashes, zero congestion, and zero emissions. And that future, I think, is going to be safer, it's going to be better, and it's going to be more sustainable for all of us. And I think it'll be just as transformative as it was 100 years ago when the horse and carriage was replaced by the automobile, and perhaps as transformative as the internet has been to us. So happy to take any questions, share any experiences experiences that you've had, but it's a pretty exciting future in this particular industry.
I have a question. I actually have two questions.
Okay.
Excellent presentation, Carol. It was very informative, and delighted to see that we have a Canadian female on the board of a multinational global organization and corporation. Both questions are a little bit different. The automobile industry, when it markets, it also part of the marketing and the negotiation in a lot of cases includes the turn-in of your used car. So has GM given thought to the strategy they're going to deal with, because people are going to move from gas to electric, and what are they going to do with those gas cars, and how are GM going to give them maybe some credit for those? So that's question one.
Okay.
The second question is, is privacy issues. You're going to have all of this data. So what are the protocols that GM are going to follow to ensure that the individual's privacies are protected?
Yeah, both great questions. On the first one, right now it's not an issue because there's still so many internal combustion engines that people are driving. But you're right, it's going to be if we're correct in the adoption of electric vehicles by consumers. And to be honest, I don't recall that we've discussed it at the board, but I'm now going to raise that question, Rick, so thank you. However, I do recall a program, and it was trying to get vehicles that were 10 years or older off the road, and that's because the pollution controls were so bad. So this is a few years ago. And what they did, we used to call it car heaven, but essentially you, the consumer, was given an incentive to get that 10-year-old car off the highway, and we had a way of disposing of those so that they couldn't be reused and have the horrible pollution problems that they had. And now I've forgotten your second question. It was also a good one.
Protecting the individual's privacy with
Oh, yeah.
data you're collecting.
Huge issue. I mean, we have to follow all the privacy rules in 50 states, 60 countries, you name it, that the governments have. And essentially what they ask customers to do, like Onstar is a good example, you have to, agree and give your consent. And I know in this new insurance business that they're talking about, you also have to, or that they're actually implementing, you have to agree and give your consent that you're willing to have, the data collected and monitored to be used for that purpose. So it's probably one of the thorniest questions because the laws are so different in various countries, states, etc. But we absolutely know that we have got to be respecting them, and otherwise we'll lose customers' confidence. So a big issue and a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to ask the question, if I may. Carol, I wonder what you could talk about is the supply chain issue with the chips and how that's affected not only General Motors, but all the new cars. It seems it's been quite a challenge for the last 6 months for the car dealers.
Yeah, it's been awful, quite honestly. Our biggest problem our biggest problem was getting our factories up and running, after I guess the pandemic's not over, but to get the factories open and running again, because we were down for a couple of months, so huge problem. Got those up and running. Then the next problem was inventory. We just didn't have enough inventory, and it wasn't just because the factories had been down for a couple of months. It's because of the chip problem. And that's, I think, probably one of the lessons we have learned and why we're thinking we have to control our supply chain for batteries, because our chips come primarily from Korea, South Korea and Asia. And you are totally dependent on a couple of big chip suppliers. in order to manufacture. So a couple of things we did to mitigate it. They call them ghost cars, but they actually assembled vehicles, parked them, waiting for the chips to come so that they could go back and put the chips in. But you know, as a result, you might have we had to shut down plants for a couple of weeks, and we've got a pretty good supply chain organization. So there's lots of work going on, you know, around the world to find alternate sources. But the reality is there just aren't that many sources. So a tough problem. And then here's a little story you probably shouldn't repeat after the meeting's over, but I mean, we were getting, it becomes a political issue too. And we were getting information such as a country which will remain nameless was trading vaccines for chips. I mean, really, that, talk about politics. So it sounds simple on the surface, but it's those factories too cost billions to make. So it's not something like you could just change your source or, you know, quickly put up a new factory. But I think we've all kind of learned our lesson on supply chain and putting too much dependence onto, you know, one country or a couple of companies. So we're still working through the problem. It's not over yet.
Thank you.
Carol, Jack Scott here. Just wondering, very fine presentation. Thank you so much. Hearing your comments about charging stations being, you know, sort of part of the deal and so on, I would be interested in knowing with the automobile manufacturers, what kinds of negotiations are underway with the governments of the different countries in terms of producing the necessary electricity and the delivery grid of the electricity that's then going to be used for all of these EVs and AVs, et cetera.
Well, you know, I would say in terms of policy and governments, the US is probably the furthest ahead in terms of policy making and investment. That latest bill that they just passed, I'm trying to remember the number. I think it was $2 billion that's, maybe that's low. Anyway, that Biden has in there for infrastructure associated with electricity and whether it's charging stations or the grid. And it's not just for the auto industry, but for, you know, a lot of things that they want to convert to electric or alternative sources. So I would say the industry certainly is working very hard with the policymakers and seeing probably more movement on the US side. And of course, Europe has always been ahead in terms of green technology. So, and not quite as vast a country. So it's pretty well developed. Canada, I don't know. I know we're talking. So it's not a lot of talking or lack of talking, but I haven't found the Canadian government has they announce infrastructure funding, and then you know, I've seen a little bit in transit and some things like that, but I haven't really seen too much movement yet compared to the US or compared to Europe on some of these infrastructure and electricity questions that you're asking about. So hopefully we'll get moving quickly as well.
Carol, thanks for a wonderful presentation, by the way.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure if this is a good question or not, but I've always wondered why manufacturers can't build small generators into wheels to keep the batteries charged so that you don't need charging stations.
Oh, well, that's another question I'll take to my next board meeting.
I think I've just patented that idea. So.
Either that or I certainly need to give you some sort of compensation. You know what? So I don't know the answer to that, but we're having, the board does education sessions every so often, usually every quarter, and we have a special call and pick a special topic. And this one on Friday is about batteries and, you know, all the stuff that we need to do to reduce costs and charging stations and whatnot. So I am going to ask that question. Is there any other way of producing electricity, essentially is what you're saying, and getting it to the vehicle without a charging station.
Well, if they do it, please keep me in mind.
I will. You could be our newest, richest person from London, Ontario.
Well, I would
Carol,
like to, unfortunately, we've run out of time for questions.
Okay.
I would like to thank you, Carol, for your presentation today. I think we have all learned something about the car industry. I suspect you have a lot of interesting stories from your life. I'm still not sure how a girl from small town Petrolia ends up as CEO of Lucent or Dean of Ivey or board of GM. So I'm pretty sure there's more stories in there, and I'd love to have you come back someday and share more of that ancient history rather than modern, what is happening now. In recognition of your presentation to our club today, the Rotary Club of London has made a contribution to the Polio Plus campaign of the Rotary Foundation. And because of you, the Rotary is one step closer to a polio-free world. So thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And I'd be happy to come back and share old war stories. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I now have some Rotary announcements. The first announcement is we will be doing our first bingo of 2021 on Sunday, August the 8th. If you are interested and available to work, I believe Randy or Rick are still looking for volunteers. We also will have a fellowship event coming up on Thursday, August the 19th in the evening. This will be a outdoor, socially distanced sort of fellowship event. So more details will be coming on that over the next week or two. And we also have a volunteer opportunity at the London Food Bank on Tuesday, August the 24th. And everyone should have received an email from past President Diane about that opportunity. And then I think I'm going to pass over to Heather for the golf tournament.
It would help if I'm not mute. Hello, everyone. So 13 confirmed teams. Still waiting to hear back from a couple on top of that. So we're getting close to at least having 18 teams, which is nice. 2 sponsorships of games left if anybody's thinking they'd like to spend $200. We have women's long drive available and men's closest to the pin hole-in-one. And the nice thing about hole-in-one for our club, if it gets sponsored, is we do make money on that one. We're not spending money on that one because people buy tickets to it to get the opportunity to try for the hole-in-one. Thank you to those of you who have been giving me or sending me off an email saying you'll even do a whole sponsor or just do a donation. By the looks of our numbers, we should be able to offer dinner only. So as soon as we hit the end of this month when our price goes from 100 per player to 125, I will send out additional comments about registering for dinner only. Still looking for auction items. I'm assuming I haven't chatted with John Diaktis in a little bit, but I can't imagine we're not looking for auction items. So if you get an opportunity to tap into a friend or a coworker or a boss or a brother-in-law or whoever, please let John know. We'll get all that documentation settled out for that one. So thank you.
Heather, it's John. I certainly am looking for things, and we have a few already. I'll throw my email address into the chat box here just so people can see it. If you know of anybody that would be looking to donate for either prizes or for a silent auction, please let me know and I'll make arrangements with them to either a drop off or I'll pick them up.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? We will now let everyone go. And remember this year's motto, serve to change lives. Have a very good week.